Okay, this is Andrew, and we're going to discuss Project 1 and 2 for CS232. This is going to be a couple of more tips for you. So basically, you want to focus, after you do the IP addressing, then you need to do static routes and your NAT and PAT. And this is going to be the center of your NAT and PAT is this video that I provided you here. So here are your four types, and the types we're going to look at is we're going to do NAT to a pool, dynamic NAT to a pool, static NAT, and then you can choose either one of the paths that you want to do. Okay, so also I want you to, if you come down here, you will see show IP NAT translations. I don't know if you can see that. Let me make that big. Show IP NAT translations. Do that and copy the screenshot once you're done so that I can see that your NAT translations are working. Okay, so let's talk quickly about some more tips of things you can possibly do to implement this. So again, remember for your NAT translations and PAT, you're going to focus on this video. It's basically telling you how to do the whole thing, but you need to adapt it to this network. So what I suggest, there's a number of ways to do this, and then okay, so in real simulations, what you would do is use a frame relay switch or something to model the internet, but that's probably beyond, at least beyond this project. We may get into it later. But so now what you can do is this. Just use a switch. Okay, so what he had would be the same as Japan. No switch going through this router to this router. Okay, that's the three routers he had. You see that? Well, the switch is just adding you a layer 2 connection. So what you're going to have to do is this. Let me end this show and grab another line. This is going to the switch, right? Okay, so let's go back to the full slide so you can see it. Okay, so this router is going to be your, well, let's go back here and check it real quick. Sorry, there's a lot of things going on here. So when we were over here, you saw your four types, right? Or your dynamic NAT to a pool, which is what we're going to do, static NAT, and then PAT. You can choose any PAT. Okay, so choose PAT on this side, and then you're going to do dynamic NAT to a pool and static NAT. So this is 1-to-1, all right? This is going to be 1-to-1, and this is going to be a pool. You're going to have two IP addresses here, which is these two are going to be considered a pool. So this is one entire network right here, right? So you have to sign these global IP addresses or public IP addresses to be on the same network, okay? And then inside you're going to have your private IP addresses. And if you look at the way he did it, he had actually another router here. So you may have to add another router, probably not. You can probably do it straight from this loopback address, do the translation, and straight out. So that's one thing you can eliminate that he did. So that should set you all up. So right here, let me type it out for you so you got it. Right here, you want to do your static NAT. So that's your 1-to-1, okay? And then right here, you want to do with your pool. So you'll have two IP addresses. So any of these 190 PCs plus the growth can share these two IP addresses because they're in a pool. And then down here, you can just go ahead and do another static NAT. And then here, do your PAT port address translation, okay? And then, so what you're going to have to do is use Wireshark on both sides, and let's look at the IP address coming into the router and the IP address going out of the router, just like he did in that video, same thing. Again, he had back here, he had another router between these. So if you find you have to do that, add a router and do it. So it would look like if you have to write a router, it'll look like this. You know, add a router here and then connect them just like he did. But probably you don't have to do that. If you assign this loopback address a network and ping, do an extended ping from this loopback address, you should be able to do your NAT translations straight through. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say. At this point, I think it should be pretty straightforward as long as you understand, layer 2, the difference between layer 2, layer 3. You know how to do the IP addressing. These videos show you clearly. Oh, don't forget there's a static routing video in the course shell, right? So let's see. Be sure you do that. Be sure you go through the static routing video because that's going to show you how to do your static routes. Now, the order of operations you want to do is up to you. You may choose to, oh, quick note about this, go ahead and look at this because this is what you're actually doing when you add this. This is a switch module, right? And you're adding it to the router in GNS3. Now remember back here, the router has its own layer 3 interfaces. These are switch layer 2 interfaces. So when you're doing your layer 3, be sure you hook into the router. If this has a switch module in it, don't hook into the switch module. And the same with this. You want to hook into the 16-port switch module for these. Don't hook into the router module. Okay, you'll see that in GNS3, but I've seen students make that mistake a lot of times, and it's just not going to work. Okay, so be sure you do that correctly, and then be sure you watch this static route video, because this static route video is going to give you all the information that you need to, right here. This gives you all the information you need to do the static routes. So your order of operations, I might suggest doing all the IP, you start here, do all the IP addressing first, right? And your network's IP addressing, and then when you get down to here, you have an option, and this is probably the option I would do, is skip at first don't do NAT and PAT. Just do your static routes from this loopback to this loopback to here. Get all your static routes in on each router, and then demonstrate that. And then at that point, I can give you a grade for full connectivity, that you understand everything, and then add the NAT. So once you add the NAT, you're going to have to change your static route some. But if you go straight to NAT and then try to add all your static routes and you can't ever get it working, then there's not much I can give you credit for, except the fact that maybe you understood what it was supposed to do if you could get something working. So I think if you skip the NAT at first, just put your static routes on each one of the routers, you should be able to get all the connectivity, and that should be a large part of the project, right? Because then you've done IP addressing, static routes, you've done everything except the NAT. So then after that, add PAT and NAT, and at that point, if you never get that part working, you're still going to have a good part of the credit. Okay, so I hope that helps you clear some stuff up. Now remember, we're just using, obviously the internet is not a switch, but we're just using that, and this GNS3 has better ways to model it, but I'm throwing enough at you already. I don't want to throw any more at you, so just put the switch in here and do it like this for now. And the best way for me to see that it's working is do your Wireshark capture before you go into the router and after the router when it's doing a NAT translation. And also, again, we already discussed, do a show from right here. You want to do a show IP NAT translations after you run through the project, because on each router, because that's going to show me what translations your router did and if it did the correct translations. Okay. And if I see all that, then you may be good to go. Right now I'm not going to ask you to turn in your GNS3 files and your show running config. Let me see how you did. If it looks like you got it working, then I probably won't ask for that, but I might have to ask for that to run it myself and dig in a little deeper to how far along you got to give you some partial credit. All right, good luck and thanks a lot.